Hello. You didn't think we'd stay away for too long, did you? Tonight we officially relegated Preston North End to the third best Preston in the country, after Preston from the Ordinary Boys and our guests this evening. Joining us from the sunny Isle of Crawley, it's Preston Bloody Johnson. Join us as we go down the rabbit hole that is NFTs and glorious beard grooming tips. It's the lower league look. It's the lower league look. It's the lower league look. It's the lower league look.
Guys and girls, we're here with, I'll clap, don't worry. Preston, I clap at the beginning of every episode. It became a thing. The only people who've ever mentioned it are Grant and Chris. I don't know why I still do it, but I do it. Welcome to a special pre-season episode of the Lower League Look. We're joined tonight, very special guest. We have Preston Johnson, co-owner of Crawley Town, Wagner United. We're going to get into both of those. Preston, thank you very much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it.
Not a problem. And then we've got Grant and Chris. You know them. I'm not introducing them. It's not worth it.
Cheers. Thank you.
So people who watched before will notice we've got a new little overlay. I've spent 3 days on this, which shows how bad I am at Photoshop because this took me 3 days. But we got to where we wanted to be. And we're good to go for a new season. And we're starting it by speaking to the newest owners in League Two. And we've got a lot of questions from Crawley fans. And the reason we wanted to do this, we wanted to take a different approach to how Crawley Town is looked at currently. When owners come in, they're asked the same questions. We're going to ask some of those questions because, we have to. But there's going to be another side of things. We want to get to know Preston. We want to know things about Preston that he's not been asked before because the fans don't really know you as a person. They just know that you're a title within the club. So, Grant, you've got questions there in terms of asking him about his personal side of things. I know you've got a very good one about his beard.
I mean, I'm not getting stupidly personal here, Preston.
No, they're not really. They're not really.
Yeah, we're not
getting
getting personal with you, man. I'm not.
Let's get this guy fired before the first game of the season.
But I suppose, first of all, before we go into it, how have you found your first sort of few months?
Sure. It's a lot of stuff we were expecting, a lot of unexpected things, especially the big one that was thrown at us 9 days after we acquired the club, which made us panic for our new manager search, which ended up being a complete positive for the club. We're really excited about the future. We think Kevin and Dan, they play a style of football and embrace analytics in a way that, puts us in, we think gives us the best chance of actually winning and getting promoted. So everything is lining up. We're a little behind as far as, or at least we were playing catch up previously, trying to, prepare for preseason and getting friendlies and fixtures set up. Even the season ticket pricing that just came out last week. We wanted to spend some time on that, listen to the fans, listen to Kevin and Dan about their thoughts before we made some actual concrete decisions. I will say one thing. I'm not sure how often you have guests that are American and use the word soccer that come on your guys' podcast or show and correct you. But I believe we're not the newest owners or the most recent owners in League Two, but Walsall was actually since us, if I'm not mistaken. And those are also American owners that I think are out of Alabama or somewhere in the South, the Travella group. So I just want to give them some love. You can't forget about the other American group that is now in League Two.
Right, let's cut and start again. No, I'm joking.
Yeah, let's start it again.
As I started to say, I was thinking, they're not. Yeah, they are. I've not missed anything.
It's all good.
The thing is, we like Walsall. Chris loves Walsall. Chris can't actually say Walsall.
I really struggle with it. So I say Walsall because I can't actually say Walsall. It's really difficult for me to say. Don't know why, but it just is. Yeah.
So you mentioned there's been a lot of things you expected and a lot of things you didn't expect. We'll get the obvious elephant in the room out of the way. You did sort of allude to it. 9 days in, you were looking for a new manager. Grant, I know you've had that question passed to you. I'm going to steal it unless you want to read it, which is about...
No, I'm more than happy. So just to let you know, it's one of the... I put a message out on one of the Crawley Town message boards, just seeing if any fans had any questions. I know you've had your fans forum with them as well. Just to see if there's any other questions that Crawley fans kind of want answers. There's a few that have came up, some football related, some moonshine related. And this is one of them, and it kind of leads really nicely into this question, Liam. So yeah, fire away.
So yeah, the question was regarding John Yems and the situation, and it's just quite simple, really. When can fans expect to see an end to that? And when the end comes, will the conclusions be made public? Will it be something that the fans will be aware of what's happened, or is it going to be a case of it's done, we're moving on, and the fans don't really find out? And I know that that's probably out of your control somewhat.
Exactly. Yeah,
but
it's up to the FA ultimately, and we just need to be as patient with them to conduct and conclude their investigation before they either publicly give a verdict or not. I'm not sure what their exact plan is as far as comms and PR, but ultimately, they told us a while back that it was going to take some time. They wanted to do a full investigation, and we needed to move on as a club and turn the page and get ready for preseason and everything else. And we just couldn't wait on the FA either. So we had to make a decision that was best for us. And we're excited about the future, but hopefully, it isn't too much longer before people have actual answers, because, we did hear just in general, as English football has a culture, and if it's a problem, if it's sensitive, it's tough to discuss and talk about, but it's something that, needs to be addressed if it is a real problem or an issue anywhere. And that's part of what our job is now here at Crawley Town as owners, is to instill a culture of inclusivity, and whether it be on the pitch or off. And so that's something that's going to be one of our priorities moving forward.
100%. Well, that's good. At least we've got that out of the way, and we can just focus on other things.
No problem.
So Grant, Chris, questions. Grant, do you want to go into finding a little bit about Preston? Do you want to ask him those questions? I know that you had questions, not just what people had sent you. You had questions of your own. It's been really weird, my inbox, because Grant has been sending me questions, and they've not been reading them. Like, Grant, I don't know the answers to these. Please, and I don't really feel too comfortable asking him about his beard. But Grant,
how can you not feel comfortable asking a guy about his beard?
I don't know, because look at his beard and look at my beard.
Yeah,
definitely.
He's an incredible beard.
I don't think there'll be a better beard in this league.
No.
That's a hope. If I make my mark in anything, it's my beard game. It was elite, world class. Yeah. So,
how do you style your beard? What do you do to your beard? That is question number one from me.
Sure. You need to shampoo it every time you're showering. Keep it clean. Can't let this thing start smelling. I use an oil usually every morning before I comb it, and then I just brush it to kind of even it out and get it trimmed every 2 months maybe or so. Otherwise, I start looking really homeless. It starts growing sideways, and so I have to keep it trim within reason. But yeah, a lot of people ask how long it took to grow it out. The initial, I don't know, it's probably been 8 years now, but the initial time it took just under a year. It's about 11 months where I really was like, holy cow, I could, I had a beard that's like this. I've just basically maintained it since.
11 months, 33 years.
Yeah, you're going to get there one day.
I don't think I am. This is the problem. Mine grows out from the start. It starts here and grows outwards, and then it flops.
I've managed to get it quite long. Certainly in lockdown, I had it down to about here, so it's about what?
Are we still talking about your beard?
Yeah. So I mean, I listen. I've got beard straighteners. I don't know if you've.
No.
Yeah, I've got some beard straighteners. It's just a heated comb.
Yeah.
And that was great.
That's intense. So you took this seriously then when you were giving it a real run. Yeah,
this has not gone how I thought it was going to go. This is really not where I thought tonight was going to go. However, if we want to start a beard grooming, we've got 4 stages of beards here.
Do you guys have a sponsor yet? Whoever does the beard straighteners should probably be on board here. We've given them so much publicity. Yeah,
that's right.
We don't have one yet. This is our lookout for this season, is to try and find a sponsor.
You know what would be great? Because at least 2 of you, I believe, are Bradford fans. I think Wagner United should sponsor your guys' podcast. That's what I think. I'm not sure if you guys can get that through, but there's always a number. So I don't know what that number is.
That is a definite thing that can be done.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll talk after you end the recording.
We can talk tonight after. Yeah. That sounds good to me. So kind of aside from beards, so tell us a little bit about yourself, your upbringing, what you've done prior to Wagner United. Just tell us a bit informally about who you are.
Sure. So I grew up in Southern California near Los Angeles. I am the oldest of four, so I'm in a pretty big sized family. My dad worked in the music industry, Hollywood, LA. So from there, I went to school. I actually studied sports psychology. I have a master's degree in sports psychology, and I had always anticipated doing. If you work in the psychology field at all, you usually have to go get your PhD just to get a job that's anything at least decent that pays well. In the midst of all that, I started. So I was pretty good at math growing up, but didn't want to study math. Maths, I believe, would be the correct way
Yeah.
to say it here. I decided to go with psychology. I was like, I'm going to change the world. I'm going to save a bunch of lives. Like pretty arrogant, like egotistical, like 19-year-old when I was choosing what I wanted to do at university. But I started playing online poker when it was booming in like 2004, 2005, 2006, 2007. Like, so my background actually is in like gambling. From there, when it became illegal to play online poker, I did pretty well for a while. But in America, they nixed it, and I had this poker bankroll, and so then I actually started betting on sports. And it took me probably about 2 years to get to a point where I was building models and putting together like algorithms to make projections for American football and basketball and baseball, and I would compare those to the markets and bet the discrepancies, and I did fairly well there. So I ended up I dropped out, didn't do my PhD. I finished my master's degree, but then I just concentrated on betting and did that for about 12 years total. Once things started getting legalized more in the United States on the betting front, I had ESPN reach out and say, "Hey, we want like a younger analyst to break stuff down on TV. We're launching this new show. Would you do that?" So I had the chance to do work with ESPN as a TV analyst, breaking down sports betting for 2 years. And then when that contract ended last year in February, this entire like NFT boom has kind of kicked in, and I had jumped in the year prior and realized just how much opportunity there was, and I wanted to just do something different. Like sports were great, but I thought there was a real chance of like building a cool new brand or concept and utilizing the blockchain technology, whether it be in sports or something else. And so I left in February. I left ESPN, and in March started a company called Pixel Vault, which had a ton of success since. We ended up launching our first project that I co-created called Punk's Comic in May. And then from there, I kind of started building a network and making a name for myself in the whole Web3, NFT, crypto space. And then the co-director, Evan Smith, met him at a dinner. He knew me from Pixel Vault. He actually knew of me anyways prior from betting. And he just is like, "Hey, we got to do, what everyone's doing with these NFT communities online and building these remote digital communities and businesses. Like no one's done it for a sports team yet." He's like, "Are you in? Like, we got to do this. You're the guy. You're the perfect guy to partner up with me for this." And so I just was on the phone and I said yes. And then it just was like, all right, let's talk to our friends and put together some money and find the best club. And from there, initially, it's like you can't get into an American sport. It's like you need billions of dollars, right? There's no real entryway, and there's also no way to get in lower and work your way up, right? Promotion relegation in English football is brilliant. Like you can actually get in at any entry level. We chose League Two as kind of the minimum viable entry point to still matter, but then try to work your way up. But like in America, you actually have teams losing on purpose at the end of the NBA and NFL seasons because they get a better draft pick for the upcoming year. And in the last half, the product's just horrible for the back half of those seasons. Whereas here, if you're going to get relegated, like the pressure is beyond what even sometimes promotion could be or a playoff. So it's just incredible. It's a great product here. So that was immediately we turned to English football. And then from there, I think we ended up speaking to 9 clubs and ended up landing on Crawley after a long process. But that was kind of the gist of my background through that kind of crazy year and a half, I guess, since I left ESPN and started doing stuff in Web3.
That's really interesting. Obviously you mentioned about your sports background, and to be honest, that was something I wasn't aware of. But why English football? Why not, I don't know, elsewhere? What was it about the draw and the opportunity for League Two? What was that about? Why?
I think so. Part of our thesis is like this feeling of an underdog story, right? Like if you go into League Two and there's a world and everyone will laugh, but like in 15 or 20 years, Crawley Town's in the Premier League, like that's a pretty crazy underdog story, right? So that opportunity to take this technology that allows for remote communities and fan bases to potentially attach them to Crawley Town FC and have them tell this story with us over the years, to be a part, be along for the ride. That was just, it's just a feeling and opportunity that we just like couldn't pass up on. And so obviously there's a high correlation to NFT users and Americans. Obviously from there's a high correlation to Americans and speaking English. If we had gone to Portugal to buy a club, we maybe would have a better chance at getting into the Champions League right out of the gate, right, like a few years in. But most people aren't going to understand like the games if they're streaming them online internationally or reading press or doing content. Like, so the English part made sense for that, where our fan base and globally English is a language that a lot of countries speak anyway. So to be honest, that was a big piece of it as well. And the price point made sense. It wasn't too extraordinary for our group to make an investment here, and so it kind of everything just kind of stacked up to make the perfect setup.
So
one thing that I think you've definitely made a head on is obviously the jumping into League Two, where I think you've 100% made a step on a certain Canadian owner, Mr. Ryan Reynolds, and buying a club in the National League, because that is just, I take it you looked at the National League and seen that it's just a horrible, horrible league to achieve promotion.
Really hard. Yeah. Did you guys watch the Grimsby match? It was insane.
Yeah.
Game.
It was crazy, but all of that just to not even get promoted anyway. It's just, it's really hard. Now they got to wait a whole other year, maybe 2, right? Maybe 3. It's tough.
And that's why I think English football is different to the other, like obviously we mentioned the likes of Portuguese football, but none of us support Grimsby. None of us support any of the teams that are in those leagues, but we all watch it. And the numbers of people that watch them, even the people that support Premier League teams, they will still tune in to watch teams further down the tables and further down the pyramid, which it's good. It's very, very good. You find a lot of people have 2 teams, which I don't like, but it happens. So you mentioned the group that you put together. Who's a part of that group? Who is that? Because there's so many names that are bandied about online. Who's actually part of Wagner United?
Sure. So there's actually our new like kind of micro site will be going live 6 or 7 days, I think. There's going to be like a big banner there of everyone that's a part of Wagner United, whether it's like an entity or an investment firm or an individual. And so I'll kind of let people have to sit on all of the names that are attached. You've heard some of them in the media and press that are, and so they'll be on there as well. But I kind of want to make people wait because we're doing this big kind of rollout in a week where we're going to start hyping up and building some content that's related to it. So, sorry, I'm just gonna leave it for that. But I will say this:
can you confirm if I throw a name?
Which one?
Can you confirm? Is Gary V involved?
Yeah. Gary's involved.
That's fine. That's enough for me.
Yeah.
I love that guy. So for me,
Gary's the best. He's like a business genius, but he also loves sports. He was big into NFTs the last year and a half and just the blockchain tech, and also big on building communities and just finding a way to include and grow together. And like his, for him, I think he's gone on record saying he wants to buy the New York Jets one day. The Jets are going to cost him a lot of money. He's going to get there one day too, but this is just like a nice little entry point for him to kind of see how would a club full of, crypto and Web3 owners, as well as some other sports business people, like how would they run it? How are they going to do things differently? We want to be more open and transparent, let our fans actually make some of the decisions, just actually take their suggestions and change them, like the season ticket one, right? Where they looked, was like, the tickets are too much money. And we're like, really? Oh, wow, they really actually are the highest average in League Two for ticket pricing was Crawley Town FC last year, and they have the fewest fans in the whole league. So like, let's find a balance. But so I think for him, it was a good opportunity to just kind of, for one, I'd known him prior with the stuff I did with Pixel Vault, and he was extremely big help as far as us getting our feet off of the ground. And so I think he just kind of wanted to be involved in this as well. He's a sports fan, but I also think there's a few people in our group that are just intrigued to see how this plays out, because they're already attached or a part of other sports teams in America or potentially in other countries. And if there's something they can gather or learn in our process and what we do that they can use for their own teams or clubs, then I think that's kind of part of the reason that some of these bigger names are involved.
And that for me was, I remember back in December when there was discussions around Wagner United and Bradford City. The first article that came out, like we said, we didn't really know much about yourself, especially over here in America. It may be different, but over here, the crypto network, it's not a big thing. But Gary V is one that I knew, and I'd seen what he'd done. And I remember saying I think it was to these guys, if crypto is going to work in football, these are the guys that are going to make it work. You know, Gary V being involved for me is a key indicator that this is a serious thing. And that's where I sort of, for me,
I appreciate that. Like a lot of fans, Crawley, Bradford, just EFL in general, like they don't think a few steps down, right? Like they're like, oh my gosh, crypto, they're scared. They don't even want to like consider it. But you went a few steps further, so thank you, Liam. I mean, you're just like, oh wait, Gary V's actually had some success. If it's gonna work, like having him involved, it makes a ton of sense. So I appreciate it wasn't even due diligence, but at least some sort of due diligence.
Well, it's that thing of, you see online that so many people that are, you know, YouTube personalities and things like that, that if they're looking to invest, they go to Gary V. You know, they work with Gary V, and that's where. So he knows what he's doing, and that was always my thing. I've watched what he's done. Even the little things where you see him going around to what we call car boot sales, you call yard sales, in him picking something up for $30, and immediately in his head he knows, I'm going to sell this later today for $400. Like he can do that, and that attitude is, if it's going to work, this is what it is. This is the way. Grant, I know you've got a question about the NFT model. And about what we want you to do, and this sounds really bad, but you know, we're football fans. We're not the most intelligent people in the world. Can you dumb it down for people? You know, what would you? People hear crypto and they get scared. They hear NFT, they get scared. Can you dumb down? Grant doesn't know.
Me and Liam and Chris, we've had countless discussions. Since you guys have entered the kind of League Two scene. Ranging from Liam being on one side, me being on the other, Chris being very on the fence.
Yeah,
and it's made for some interesting discussion. So it would be good to have an idiot's guide for any of your Crawley fans, from me, to what this is and what this will mean and how it will correlate to Crawley Town and football.
So I will give you guys two different answers. The first will just be a very broad version of what NFTs and blockchain technology are. And then the second will be how the NFTs themselves correlate to Wagner United and Crawley Town FC, and what our general plan is there, without giving too many details, which will be more known in a week or two. So first, you guys have heard of blockchain technology. You hear all the words like, oh, they're mining coins and tokens, and then there's like a ledger, and like really the idea is that a lot of the things that we do day to day, or we used to do day to day, can be verified on chain without a third party, right? It's the whole idea and ethos of decentralization. And so NFTs themselves, which stand for non-fungible tokens, right? A lot of the last year and a half, the craze was behind art. It was digital art that was verifiable on the blockchain. It's like, if you have this, it's in your wallet on the blockchain, it means you own it, right? If you have a picture of the Mona Lisa and then there's 20 copies in their physical versions, they all look the exact same. Only one person actually has the real one. Blockchain technology would tell you and prove quite literally which one was real. And so digitally, it just makes that process a lot simpler as far as fakes, this and that. From there were a lot of these communities. You've heard of some of the crazy ones like Bored Ape Yacht Club, potentially, if you've Googled around or searched a little bit, that were built on these JPEG, just digital art pictures that look really like elementary when it's all said and done, right? It's like, how is this worth this much money? But it's really like what that JPEG or what that NFT represents and what it gives you access to. And it's almost like a status or part of your persona in this like subset community of the world or online. From there, we're now going to what we're trying to do with Wagner United and Crawley Town Football Club. The easiest way to think about what our NFTs will be are like virtual season tickets. Okay, our NFTs, when people get them, they're going to get you a shirt, right? They're going to get you a scarf, potentially a hat or socks, like just different items of merch. All right, they're going to give people internationally a discount on the streaming to actually watch Crawley Town football games. Okay, they're going to also give those people that own the NFTs unprecedented access to content, like maybe live streaming a training session each week, or sitting in a room with the coach and me and like a data scientist and discussing, and analyzing the upcoming opponent once a week. Like just little things like that are actually accessible through the blockchain technology itself. If you have the NFT, it's a token gated. All right, you own it. Now you can come see this training session or have this AMA with this player or watch this session with the coach and Preston and the analytics team, whatever it may be. So that's like just a few of the ideas that we're considering. But ultimately, it also is going to be actual governance and a voting mechanism where people can help make decisions, right? And so all of those things are just attributed to holding that NFT. And so the focus there is like we have this remote fan that we want to make feel like they're here in Crawley Town and it's their team. They have a team to root for every Saturday. And in order to do that and keep them engaged, the NFT is like that pipe or that connection between the remote fan and the club here locally. So hopefully that kind of helps articulate, because I think a lot of people see like Liverpool tried to sell 175,000 NFTs to their own fans. And it's like, well, what is this? Like, you guys try to sell us stuff every year, all the time. What does it even get me? And they're 99.9% of them don't even want the NFT anyway. They only sold 9,000. Everyone looks at it as like a complete flop. We're like quite literally doing the reverse. We're bringing a football club, professional football club, to NFT fans, people that already are into that space. You don't have to worry about us selling out 100. We're not going to sell 175,000 anyway, but that's like a crazy number. But regardless, like the sentiment is just completely reversed. And so that's why when big clubs like Liverpool or others, even in America, have tried to sell NFTs, they're just cash grabs, right? They just come off or at least look like they're cash grabs. And so that's what we need to try to help implement and kind of set a precedent within sport and this whole Web3 culture, that there's ways to do it that, benefit. Then if we have this extra revenue source coming internationally, we put that money into the wage bill and sports science and infrastructure and training facilities in the community. And then the people here actually are like, holy cow, this is amazing. Now we actually have a potential shot at moving up and doing it the right way and being sustainable. So that's like the whole strategy and how those all connect.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much answers one of the questions that one of the fans came in, is how are you actually looking to grow the fan base abroad? And it looks to be through that, because you have mentioned that you're looking to grow a global fan base for Crawley Town.
Exactly. We want to attach the current one to the new fans that we can bring in. And if we're able to do that, then if you live here, like, again, we were confident we could lower season ticket prices by a third. And, revenue wise, we're still going to be in good shape as a club or as an ownership group. And so they're already seeing the benefits.
By the way,
right?
we just commend you for the season
Oh,
ticket deal.
thank you.
Your
Yeah.
season ticket deal is phenomenal. We've been going on at the end of last season when season ticket prices were coming out. Obviously, we're in a cost of living crisis here in the UK. People are struggling to afford to heat their homes, and some clubs are still putting the cost of their season tickets up. What yous have done is go completely against the grain and make things more affordable for fans to come in. It sounds, from what you've said so far, yous are giving them more from the season ticket deal. So I really want to go on record and completely commend you guys for what yous have done with that.
Thank you. Yeah. No, that's great, Grant. I appreciate that. And I'll say it's a little painful with these guys over this way, I think, that are Bradford fans, because whenever we post something about season tickets, they're like, all right, well, talk to us when you have 12,000 season ticket holders.
What I will say to you is, you should, like, that's not just specific to you. That is, it doesn't matter who posts that. Bradford fans,
you just crush everybody.
Yeah, I love this. I love this club, but at times we have some of the worst fans. We do have sometimes some of the worst fans, because here's the thing. Yeah, fine. We had 12,500 season tickets last season. It's fantastic for League Two, but you finished two places higher than us.
Yeah,
and that's
it's true.
So what did it get us? It got us 12,500 really angry fans on a match day. So it's great when it's going well. It's not so great when it's it's going poorly.
It's a lot more pronounced either direction, depending on. It actually doesn't bug me at all. Just to be clear, I don't actually care. I think people they make a good point. It's like, okay, you're right. Like you sell a lot more season tickets, but I always love when the Crawley fan responds underneath and they're like, all right, what were the scores of the games last year? Where did we finish on the table? So it's a nice little rivalry that's building. So hopefully,
I don't know if you know, there's been one big event in the last, I think it was 2015 between Bradford and Crawley. There was a game at Valley Parade, and I think Crawley won 2-1. And at full time, I want to say an 11-man brawl, Chris?
Yeah, it was roughly about that. There 6 or 7 players sent off?
Yeah.
So
it was but it's not just, when people talk about brawls in football, it's usually a little bit of pushing and shoving, shirt pulling. This was fists flying. This was bad.
Intense, yeah.
And the manager, Steve Evans, at the time, he ended up getting banned from the stadium.
Really? Altogether? Wow.
Yeah. So we'll talk about that after we stop recording.
Yeah, we'll see how long it takes before I'm banned from the stadium too.
You know, you're
not going to do the same thing.
Probably.
I think the only
definitely not.
Yeah, you definitely won't be doing the same thing. But you know, it is a bit of a rivalry, and I quite like it. I'm not going to lie to you. I do quite like it. I do like because we don't really have any rivals as such in terms of, especially locally. You guys being a bit further afield, there is that, but it's nice to have, I suppose, that rivalry. Otherwise, it'd be boring. You know, we don't have a rivalry with Hartlepool. Grant supports Hartlepool, so now we have a rivalry with Hartlepool because I don't want to see his team beat my team. And this season, Grant came to Bradford to watch Hartlepool and Bradford, and he had to sit in the Bradford stand with me. And Hartlepool won 3-1, and he couldn't celebrate. And then when we played them at Hartlepool, I had to sit in the Hartlepool end with Grant, and Bradford won, so I couldn't celebrate. So we just ended up, neither of us celebrating. Grant's seen my team more this season than his own, which is
pretty much.
Oh wow.
Pretty much. See, going back a little bit to decisions that you mentioned that NFT holders will be able to make, what sort of decisions are they able to make? I had one fan put in a question saying, is it things like players or tactics that they would be able to decide? I wouldn't have thought that would have been the case. But what sort of decisions are we looking at that the NFT holders would be able to make?
So we have to be realistic. Right, like you're right. Like we can't just have people voting every week who the 11 is. Like it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
we have Kevin Betsy now to make that decision, and we're going to be extremely confident in his process and in the way he wants to play. What is interesting is you've had now getting a little bit more technical. These fan tokens are like Socios. You've maybe heard of Socios if you've Googled around. Maybe you guys haven't. You should check after this. But it's some sort of fan token representation for different clubs, bigger clubs, and they allow you to vote on certain things. But sometimes it's like Pepsi or Coca-Cola. It's like, in the end, do you care if you're at the stadium rooting on your club? If you're drinking Pepsi or Coca-Cola, probably not that much. So we want to make them have access to decisions that actually impact to some degree the way we play or the players that are on the pitch, and so, or the fan experience at a more macro level. So one example that I'm pretty confident we'll probably do, I can't guarantee it just because it's a little further off, but for example, we're going to see once the season starts, we'll have a few months before the January transfer window. We'll see where the club's at, but we might go to the fans here. When I say giving them access to voting rights or governance, like we want the season ticket holders to have just as much weight as the NFT holders potentially. It's one thing that we've discussed. Like, all right, if they're equal, then everyone gets to decide together. It's a collaborative process. But going back to January, call it end of December, we do a vote. It's like, where should we spend? We have this much allocated for the January transfer window. Call it £300,000. Where should we spend the 300,000? Should it be on offense or up front with strikers, forwards? Should it be with the midfield? Should it be with center backs on the defense? Should it be a keeper? Right? Like we can actually then have them vote on decisions or options that we're okay with as an ownership group, but as a team, and Kevin's okay with regardless, right? So it might be 50% for a striker, which everyone wants to see goals. So that's probably going to be the answer people vote on anyway. But also, if we're doing a good job of proposing and saying like, hey, look, we're scoring the 4th most goals in the league by giving up the 4th most, then we should probably improve defensively, right? So like maybe we should be putting 67% of that budget towards defense, but we're going to let the community decide, and they'll all be levels that we're okay with either way, depending on where they vote. And so it's something like that where if they are saying that they have an actual impact on a decision that's going to help or hurt their club, I mean, the stakes are pretty high at that point. Like it's an intriguing proposition. And so that's one example. We're going to try to find a few others over the course of each season where they have a real say in something that isn't just like fan experience, small items.
Yeah, Preston, I just want to ask you, I mean, you kind of sort of answered it a little bit, but I want to talk about the traditionalists. So maybe it's even people who maybe not even computer savvy or tech savvy. How do you give them confidence that you guys aren't just going to go away with, say, for instance, you're going to use it all this way? How do you prove to them that their voice will be heard?
You mean when you say traditionalists, you mean like the local community, the local fans?
Yes, but they might be the ones who are not going to get involved with the NFTs. That they are the season ticket holders. They
Understood. Yep. So yeah, you're totally right, because we don't want to disregard those people, right? And so one thing that I think is important, which it's on our plans after I get back we leave for Spain tomorrow for a quick conference in Madrid for Transfer Room. We wanted to represent Crawley Town there, so me and one other person are headed there. We'll be back Friday, but next week we actually want to start meeting with locals and put together a fan council. But it's not just like a fan council where you say you have a fan council and you meet once every 2 months or 3 months and no one actually gets anything done. We want to have maybe once a week or at least once every 2 weeks where we kind of have who are the 5 to 7 or 8 most influential fans in Crawley that we think can make a difference and are hearing, from all of their friends and family, things that need to be done or things that we can change and make impactful differences. And so we wanted to put together that fan council so that, it's like if you're a traditionalist, you don't know anything about NFTs, or maybe you don't even have a season ticket, you don't have access to a lot of the decision making. The fan council is going to be the one that helps us put a lot of these concepts and mold the questions that we bring to the fans in the first place. And so that's one thing that we're going to do that I think will be extremely helpful. And it's easy to just talk and say you're going to do it, right? But like one thing we've just recognized since coming over here is how often people say we're going to do fan engagement or like put together a fan council, then they never actually do it. And I'm like, we're actually going to. That's one thing I want to promise to the Crawley Town fans. And one thing, again, we have a lot to do still, and there's a lot with this preseason running, but we got a lot of interesting feedback from when we did a Twitter Spaces after we hired Kevin and Dan. And we just discussed publicly our interviewing process for the new manager position, why we went with Kevin and Dan, and like even into specific metrics and style of play and tactically what we were looking for and things that, Kevin said that really stood out to us. We basically went and just did it all open book out in the open for any fan or anyone online that wanted to listen. And afterwards we had 2 reporters, one that doesn't even like us, that said, hey, that was really, really interesting and entertaining. And then we had fans saying, hey, are you going to do that again? That was a really cool inside look. And so it's stuff like that where if we're interacting and engaging with the fans and we're being honest about how we say we're going to be transparent and open, then they're going to, we're going to win them over. They're going to be on our side, and then they're going to see the things that they bring to the table actually being implemented, and they can actually see it impact their community and club.
I came into this space when it was on. I think I came on kind of halfway through, and I thought it was really good. The transparency from you guys was phenomenal. It's a breath of fresh air to hear it from an owner of a club coming out and saying, look, what we look at is we look at the things like your XG, the percentage of where we're playing on the pitch, we're wanting to push forward, play on the front foot, and that was one of the big things that made you look at Kevin promoting youth throughout the team, because he's had a big look in. I'm coming through the youth ranks England, managing in at Arsenal under 23, and that was a huge reason why you looked to bring Kevin in.
And it's no secret. I mean, like, this is one of those things like, oh, you don't want to let people know your strategy. It's like, so when I say we're focused on youth, and like, look at our squad, like the main core is 28 to 38 years old. Like
Mhm.
we're not giving anything away saying we want to focus on youth and get faster, play with more pace and play more aggressively. It's like, that's like, should be obvious. Like so those are the types of things where I think other clubs or teams or franchises, the word you guys don't like to use in America, you don't want to give away any information or info, but it's like, there's a lot of stuff that, look, everyone knows that Crawley Town's current squad is pretty old. Of course, we're going to try to improve there, right? And so Kevin obviously is a big part of that. But so those are the types of things I think you can actually just talk about freely, and it's really not that much downside there. So I'm glad you appreciated it. I think a lot of fans did as well. And we're going to do something similar actually next week. Hint, hint, for about one of our first signings, I believe.
Oh,
No, you don't. Grant's right. You don't see it, especially at this level. I think when you get to a higher level, there is a little bit more transparency because it's harder to hide things. And I think that
Totally.
they struggle to hide things. But at this level, from an ownership side of things, you don't see it. You don't see owners willing to come out and basically give their game plan away. And that's a confidence thing for me as well. It shows how confident you are in what you're doing. You're willing to say, not only are we, this is what I'm going to do, but this is how I'm going to do it. And you're that confident in what you're going to do that you're basically saying, I'm going to do it this way, and you're not going to stop me. It's a good way.
I've just had the fear of God put into me now with you saying you're announcing a player next week. I'm just like that young player playing on the front foot. I just sit there and going to go, are we going to see Luke Molyneux in a Crawley shirt next year?
I wasn't trying to set anything up in that regard. I think no, it's more. It's not even necessarily announcing a player or a signing. It's more like we want to try to like go another layer, kind of similar to like, how did we get to Kevin Petsy? And so once we have our first signing, it's like, okay, let's do a Twitter Spaces and talk through our discussion of why or how we found this center back, or we wanted to add a striker or whatever it may be, and then that gives you a look into how we did it. And then the news is already there. Like, oh, that's the player. So, we're not like breaching confidentiality, or we try to keep things within, EFL rules and regulations, of course. But yeah, so I think you're safe, Grant, but nothing's ever 100%.
That doesn't mean he's not signing for Bradford.
I'm making a call right after we hang up.
Honestly, I would say do it. You will not be disappointed. I do want to I want to draw an end to the crypto thing to move on to the football side of things. But before we do, there's one thing that you said when you first came in, which was you want to be successful and promoted within 2 seasons. And if that doesn't work, I think the words that you said were you would stand for re-election. Was that correct? Am I right in that? Yeah. What does that mean? Because I can't understand how that works from an outsider, but this is what I mean when I say at League 2 level, things happen at clubs and it doesn't really spread around the other clubs, and the fans of other clubs who are interested don't really see what's going on. So that's why we wanted to do this. But what does that mean in layman's terms? What would that look like?
So, and we realize and recognize it comes off extremely arrogant. Like, we get it. We're fine. We're going to sleep at night. It's okay. But one, we talked about it earlier a little bit, is you have owners, especially in the EFL, that have come in, they buy new clubs, say, hey, we're going to be in the championship in 5 years. And they'll say that, but there's no downside, right? There's no accountability. And so we think ownership accountability, whether it's America or in the UK with football, there's no downside to owners. They're still rich. They still own the club. If they're losing, it doesn't matter. It's always the coach's fault, the general manager's fault. Like, those are the ones that are sacked. Like, why shouldn't the owners have accountability too? And so that was kind of our premise, or our idea here was, let's say we got 2 years to get promoted. And if not, at that point, the fans get to vote us in or out, right? Like, if they think we did a good job, we just didn't quite make promotion, but they're happy with other things we did, they can vote us back in. But at that point, they at least have the opportunity to have proposals from other members of our ownership group to say, like, hey, maybe we should do it this way, this way, this way. And therefore, then other people from our group could take over for a 2-year window or whatever it may be. And so that's the idea. It isn't that Wagner United would hurry and sell the club. It would just be the different people with different strategies would come forward, and the fans get to pick the one they think best suits the club. We hope, obviously, Evan and I are here forever, but the results ultimately dictate that, and we want to be accountable to that. It's either our fault we didn't get promoted, or it's our, praise if we do. And so, anyway, we just wanted to have actual, like we say, we got walk the walk, right? Or you can't just
Mhm.
talk the talk.
Mm.
So I'm not sure if that's a saying in the UK, but in America,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
like, and that's how it should be. So anyway, it's just another part of another sector of just being transparent and open and trying to get things done and doing it in a unique way.
Yeah, that was the answer. Yeah, that's answered it for me, because I couldn't understand if it was a case of in 2 years, if the fans aren't happy, you will sell. But to hear that there's other people in the group that are willing to, I suppose in a way it's like stepping down as the owners and somebody
Correct.
stepping in. And so no, I actually really like that. I think that's a really good way of doing it.
The idea honestly stems from like Eben Smith. My partner's a huge New York Knicks fan, and James Dolan is the owner of the Knicks. I think it's been like 30 years running. And the Knicks have just been mediocre, despite having like the most money flowing to the club or the franchise. For 30 years, they've never really won anything. They've made a couple runs in the playoffs, but like, and he's just like, James Dolan's the worst. Why is it that we have to just sit here and deal with James Dolan running this team, despite all the money advantage and resource advantages? They can't figure out how to win a championship. And it's that's the essence of like what we're trying to at least bring a potentially new method of running a sports organization. Yeah.
You see it a lot in football when you get fans fall out of ownership with the chairman, like sack the chairman. This is the chance, what you've said, if it's not working, to let them to use their ability to vote on that.
Yep. Exactly.
For change, putting your balls to the wall, basically.
Yeah,
there's a little pressure.
That's a saying in America, because that's really weird.
No, we got that one, Grant. It's okay. We don't need subtitles on that one.
Yeah. But no, that's an for me. I think that's a very good way of doing things, because what it also does is it forces you as owners to act, to always be willing to progress. Like there are certain clubs who, like you say, they bring a manager in, it doesn't work, the manager loses his job, the fans kick off, they bring in a new manager, everyone's back on side, it doesn't work, the manager leaves, the owner just sits there and just continually gets away with it, really. And I think the accountability, I think we talk a lot about the EFL fit and proper tests, because there are a few owners, the two teams.
They asked us a lot about that on the internet right after the announcement was made. Well, are you sure you guys are fit and proper? Like, yeah.
Well, this is, you look at, so Oldham and Scunthorpe, who've just gone down, we've covered them quite a lot. We've got a lot of their fans who've been on, and we've done it completely. No matter what we say, those owners aren't fit and proper. They're not fit and proper for what they're doing. They don't invest. Every season the club goes backwards. They've been relegated, they've relegated again. It just doesn't work, and the owner has no accountability. The owner of Oldham, for example, is sat now with a club in the National League who don't own all their stadium, and he's unwilling to budge unless someone gives him £6 million. Yeah. It doesn't make sense. So no, I actually really, really like that. One question we got was about branding. So this is probably one of the more tougher questions, but it's not too tough.
Tougher branding, as far as like you're putting me on the spot?
No, not necessarily on the spot. I suppose the answer could go one of two ways. It's either everyone's going to love the answer or everyone's going to hate the answer.
Got it. Okay.
So branding, as far as long-term, the growth of the brand, where do you see that being? Do you see Crawley Town as a brand that can go global, or would the global side of things be a Wagner United brand? Because for me, you look at, if I was not into football, but I was into NFTs and I was into crypto, and I lived in, let's say, Japan or China, and I'm looking at that sort of thing, and I'm looking at where I'm going to invest. Crawley Town, I don't think would stand out as a name for me, but Wagner United would. And that's just, it's about the attractiveness of the brand. And so do you feel that Crawley Town is the brand that you can take worldwide, or would it be Wagner United that was the brand outside of the UK?
Sure. I think that's a good question. I'm not sure I even can tell you exactly or have an exact answer for you. I would say that right out of the gate, we're trying to make Crawley Town FC a global brand, right? A global club that everyone can attach themselves to and root for and be a part of and tell the story. So I guess my first thought was if Wagner United becomes a global brand, then Crawley Town must be as well. Like I think they're kind of one and one. They're together. Exactly how we're going to do it, like, I mean, we don't have everything planned out exactly. We don't know. I mean, we got crazy curveballs thrown our way 9 days after we acquired and took over here. Like we have a lot to do and a lot to I think kind of show that this playbook has potential and is workable and is profitable. And then from there, if we have an opportunity to grow on any level, whether it's Crawley or whether it's Wagner, I think we're going to look into it and try to do it. But yeah, so I think it's a fair question. I'm not sure exactly how the audience will perceive. The reason why I said it that way is I'm not sure how the audience will react or perceive, because you're right. You might be in Japan and feel like, oh, I attached to Wagner, but not really Crawley. But if Crawley Town's the genesis, like foundation of what Wagner United is, then theoretically, like you're connected to Crawley too. Or you might have someone that's in, Mexico near the United States that loves Crawley Town because they grew up playing football and they heard about the crypto stuff. And I mean, I don't know. It could go either way. I think it's just going to come down to how the audience ultimately interprets it. And so I just don't think I have an answer ultimately. But yeah, no, it's a fair point to make.
I think the main concern of people would be, and you've seen it from your social medias, from the Wagner United social media, from certain posts that went out on Wagner United social media that then should have come from the Crawley Town, and you know what I'm talking about. It was, I'm gonna say something like me, Grant, and Chris. We don't have ties to Crawley Town. We think that your social media is incredible. Like we think he's brilliant.
Oh, saying that when the first tweet went out about the manager leaving,
Yes,
I was. Yeah, you can go back a couple of podcasts and hear what I said about that. I was like, I don't think that's the right move to make, doing it from that. And yeah, I was more the other side.
But that will for me, the question, I suppose the overall question regarding the branding is Crawley Town as a name, as a brand, as a football club is going nowhere. It will always be Crawley Town, because I think people are concerned that Wagner United is essentially waiting in the background to become Crawley Town. That's not the case, is it? Is it?
Like an actual like name change or anything like that?
Yeah, it's always going to be Crawley Town.
Yeah, that's not in the play now. It'll be Crawley Town Football Club. I think occasionally they'll change the crest, but we're not changing the colors. We're not planning to change the crest either, but I'm just saying it does happen. But that's not in the cards for us. It was, if we're waiting in the wings for anything, it's just to get promoted and try to play at a higher level where people are just waiting for that. So, I mean, we just got to, that's our mission, and we just got to make it happen. And hopefully if that's the case, then everyone's rooting for us, outside of the UK, and everyone here hates us, which kind of goes to that kind of vibe and brand of the voice on Twitter with Wagme versus like the actual Crawley Town. Here, I'll be honest. It's kind of crazy that people care so much whether or not one account tweets it or not. I mean, ultimately, it doesn't actually matter. Ultimately, when they were mad that we were tweeting about it and not Crawley, but then we cut the season ticket prices by a third, like people are like, oh, okay, we had to wait a few extra days, but they survived, right? Like, just give us a little patience. We have your back. It's going to be okay. It doesn't matter what account it really is tweeted for. But I also respect that they want Club Matters tweeted from the Crawley Town account. We're going to do that more frequently when a lot of the trolling stuff will be more Wagme. I mean, like, we'll be able to kind of separate. And if you appreciate that, guys, I know some of the people in our group will appreciate that you guys enjoy it, but some of the fans couldn't take it, right? They were just like, "What's going on here?" I had a lot of DMs that day. I'll say,
Preston, you're always going to get that. It doesn't matter what you do on Twitter. You're always going to get that. You're always going to have the negative, and you're always going to have the positive. So
I everyone happy.
Brush it off. Honestly, I don't think there's an issue there at all.
I think for me, looking at it, I can understand why the Crawley fans maybe were a little bit agitated, because especially when you were looking for a manager, everything was just up in the air. There was no everything was just so uncertain.
Yeah.
Whereas I think now, once you make a few signings, once your manager's in place, you can probably get away with it a lot more. But like you say, if you're consistent, and you're going to consistently do it, it's just going to be a case of when things go right, people will love it. When things don't go right, people are going to hate you for it. But it's we because we do League Two as a generalization here. We always 1 week, if we praise one team, then their rivals don't like us that week because we've praised that team, and it's just the way that football is. Apart from Carlisle, we've all got this. We don't like Carlisle.
So far away.
We just don't like them. We don't know why.
They're closer to me.
They're
That's
closer
true.
to Grant, but yeah, we don't actually know why we don't like Carlisle. There's not actually a reason. It started as a joke in the voiceover at the beginning of the podcast, one episode. It started as a joke, and just from then it's steamrolled. So we don't like Carlisle. So last question from me, and then I'll ask these two if they've got their last questions. But Kevin coming in as the manager, what's his setup going to look like? Is he going to be the one specifically looking to make the signings? Is he bringing in a recruitment manager? Is there a director of football involved? What does that look like day to day for him? Is he going to be just solely focused on the things on the pitch, or is he going to be getting involved in the transfers?
So I'd actually be curious what you guys think about this, because I know people hate the American comparisons, but this is like what I grew up seeing, and I'm just curious how you guys think it relates. But in America, it's basically been proven time and time again that if you have the head coach trying to do all of the general manager stuff at the same time, like that's two different jobs. Like it's way less efficient to have the same manager doing that day-to-day coaching on the pitch while trying to do player recruiting and scouting and negotiate with agents, like all those things. Like you're never going to do any of those very well if you're trying to do all of them. So for us, we think it's like two different jobs. Now, what's nice about Kevin is, so we went into the interview process as a whole, and just we were frank and blunt with some of the candidates we interviewed. Were like, oh no, I want last say on everything, and that's a must. And it's like, okay, well, we'll see you later. Like it was pretty easy for us to just say this is going to be a collaborative process. We have the data and analytics that are going to back a lot of our decisions. We have an actual like sporting director, data scientist that's also helping, but also used to coach in America and used to play in America. We have other third-party consultants and scouts. We also have Kevin and his network and Dan and his network. It's like this collaborative process. So if we have all this information and we can kind of put it together and then make the optimal decision, that's going to give us a much better chance. So Kevin's a part of it, but if we had him doing all of that while trying to coach day to day, it's just, we're not going to be as good of a football club. So for us, it just seemed obvious. But here, at least at the lower levels, I know at the Premier League or even Championship, they have different positions and different job titles, is I guess how you would phrase it. But like at least in League Two, we just noticed there's like quite a few clubs that have one guy, and previously that's how Crawley Town was running, and it's like that's not a very efficient way to run the club. So anyway, I'm just curious if you guys had thoughts on that. But.
Yeah, I think we all agree. I personally do. I do think it is filtering down to these leagues now. It is a very common thing. So it works. Of course it does. It needs to be that a manager needs to focus, or sorry, a coach needs to focus on the coaching. Right. You need to have, head of recruitment who brings in the players, obviously discusses with the coach potentially about who he might bring in. It works. It's, this is where football has gone now, and it works. That's how it is. So for me, yeah, that's how it needs to be.
Yep. Yeah, it's very rare that you find a manager who can do it all these days. There's just so much that goes on. I think back in the day when it used to be a case of you'd speak to an agent, you'd agree a contract, you'd make the signing, and they would play for you. There's so many other elements that come into things now. Players aren't just players, especially as you get higher up, players are brands. They come with sponsorship. They come with, there's the social media side for players. And I agree. You've got to have.
Sports evolved. We need to evolve as clubs with the sport.
Which is why, as I said, Grant, which is why I said crypto will work in football, because we have to evolve.
We've went full circle here.
We've gone full circle. Grant, Chris, have you got any last questions before we wrap up? We don't want to keep Preston too long.
I've got one.
Go on.
Again, this is a question from fans. When will your moonshine be available to drink in Reds, and what sort of price are you going to be charging, is what's been asked?
I would have to ask Rona. So if they're a fan and they're listening, I'd have to ask Rona. I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head, so I apologize.
Well, you can tweet that one out when you find it, because I've never had it.
From which account? Which account should I tweet?
We'll tweet it from ours. We'll tweet it from ours, and we'll just take the abuse. We love the abuse.
Okay, good.
Chris, you had a question?
No, I was just going to say I think that this has cleared up a lot. I hope it has for the listeners. We've asked the right questions, and we just really appreciate you coming on, Preston. Spend some time with us to go through it, and yeah, awesome.
Of course. Yeah. Thank you, guys. Happy to come back on anytime.
Yeah. Now you're going to hear the worst outro of any podcast in the world.
Do you clap again or no?
No, there's no clap in this one. I don't get involved in the outro. Grant walks us out, and it's a rambling.
Oh, it's a complete ramble. It's a complete ramble. So, guys, ladies, gentlemen, whoever's listening, thank you very much for listening once again. Don't forget, like us on Facebook, share it out on Facebook. Everyone share this episode on Facebook. I've loved this episode. It's been a hell of a lot of fun. Follow us on Twitter, retweet it, quote tweet it, tell us what you think of the episode, tag a few of your friends in it. Let's get this listened to, because I think this has been an awesome episode that we've had. Don't forget, listeners on Spotify, give us a rating. Rate us 5 stars, please. We want to keep our 5-star rating up this season. When you comment, say whatever the hell you want in the comments. We don't care at all. It doesn't matter. Just rate us 5 stars. Do the same on iTunes. I don't know how the comments thing works on iTunes. Rate us 5 stars. Guys, thank you once again. We have been the Lower League Look.